Here we are for the our second session on Spirit in Business with Peter Leong. Peter, lovely to have you back. Last time you took us through this beautiful journey, this historical perspective on spirituality, and given us this big picture overview. And today, I believe we're going to go a little bit more into the daily application. So yeah, welcome. And over to you, Peter.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Mark. I had a good time last week, going through this big picture. And today, as you say, we'll drill down a bit more. Just very quickly, Mark, we started looking with the Big Bang, looking at spirituality in the context of about 13.8 billion years ago. And then we started to move down to 4.6 billion years ago into the four epochs, if you like, of thinking, all right, in terms of spirituality and spirit. So the whole idea basically that if we have a big picture of the past over a long period, then, we need not despair. We can see that spirit and spirituality can take its time, all right, even within our own time frame, to give us hope, to give us, insight into how to create a better and more fulfilled future for the humanity. And that was the whole idea, mostly of last week, the big picture. And to go on to how spirit and spirituality comes in play in organization, we also mentioned that we are shy to talk about spirit and spirituality in the workplace. I think I just want to say quickly that it's because we are still living, through the thinking mindset of modernity. In other words, still very much in the mindset of rational and scientific thinking, analyzing, breaking into little parts, many parts, and then taking it from there. So spirituality has come into the background. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why we have that kind of hang up to talk about spirit and spirituality in the workplace. But the thing is, despite all this, as you will see in the next slide, Mark, spirit has always been in the background of our mind. This is the innate nature of our humanness, if you like. So we are starting to see, we have been seeing, I remember during my working days, we talk about, for example, the simple one showing up often is team spirit. And very quickly, you can see there that the term team spirit is a literal one, because when we connect to the spirit in ourselves, and those is always relational, all right, we work with, we truly become a team, right? In other words, a full potential, a full functioning, a high performance, a great and even greater team, and so on, right? And I found out that, the Japanese actually have a specific Japanese word, kyosei, all right? And it's and for them, they use the word, and it means the spirit of cooperation. Very similar to, Western cultures, that same meaning as teamwork. And of course, we look, another common use is we say a spirited person or an animal. The horse is a spirited animal. So, from the very everyday to a more sort of deeper wisdom, we have here a range of how spirits show up even though we in the workplace, even though we don't talk about it much at work.
Thank you for laying this out so beautifully, and just reminding us how omnipresent the word spirit is in our day-to-day lives. It's just it's actually amazing to see this all kind of captured so precisely on one slide, and how comfortable we are using the word, and yet how uncomfortable we are using the word. It's like, how is that possible? How can we be both comfortable and uncomfortable with it, or both, shy and confident? It seems like a paradox in a way.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if what does that reveal about the human condition?
Yeah, I think that's very, very good question. It reveals that there is always something within us, and I think today we're going to call it spirit, right? Soul or spirit. Um, for example, whenever we are experiencing something that is so awesome, imagine yourself, at the top of a peak, spending hours and hours going up to a peak of a mountain, and right on top, you feel as if there is you're soaring. The heart, the soul, the spirit feels like you are actually right up closer to heaven, if you like, all right, or uh, to the peak of our experience.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. It reminds me of this quote that I think a lot of us are familiar with, that it's not the fear of failure that holds us back, but it's the fear of success. That there's something about imagining being successful that we're afraid of, rather than necessarily fear of failure, which I think is really quite fascinating, right, about the human condition. And maybe that has maybe something to do with this paradoxical relationship we have with spirit, right? Because I think what spirit is, it invites us to expand, it invites us to think bigger, to dream, to imagine what is possible, and that there's something very scary about imagining ourselves to be in our fullness, to really express the fullness of who we are.
Yeah,
Love it. So I'll move to the next.
yeah.
Hold on, let me just bring up the next slide.
So, I think the point here in bring up, these are more formal. So I say over the last few decades, all right, maybe 50, 60 years ago, researchers and psychologists started to look at spiritual. I was surprised to find that you have a handbook of spirituality in the workplace. You have a handbook of spirituality, and performance, and another handbook, and hundreds and articles. You just search on the internet, all right, spirituality in the workplace. If you look at the center this of the slide, I think that is the most accepted and often used by researchers from the academic world, that spirituality is the recognition that employees have an inner life. So you step back into your inner life, and that nourishes and is nourished by meaningful work. So there's a question of meaningful. And the third element that takes place in the context of community. Spirit is relational. Spirit is not about oneself. Part of it is about oneself, your own spiritual growth. But your own spiritual growth is not for its own. It's, you got to look at the community, the team, the organization as a whole, or community outside the workplace. Last but not least, Mark, I think, we know that very often, in our complex thing, we need a new type of thinking. All right. The same old thinking can solve incremental problems, but in a world of complexity, all right, I think spirit and spirituality in the workplace will enable us to transcend this old way of thinking into a new type of thinking. Albert Einstein says a new type of thinking is essential if mankind is to survive and move towards higher level. So, these are the more formal, if you like, descriptions or even definitions of spirit in the workplace for it.
Wonderful to have all this in one place, Peter. It's definitely a very, very compelling story for spirit at work. You can't really argue with the benefits of any of this. I think the wholeness, integrating who we are and what we do. The one on the bottom right here, spiritual intelligence, the ability to behave with wisdom and compassion while maintaining inner and outer peace, regardless of the situation. When you think about leaders and decision making, how important is this, right? When it comes to good decision making, is to be able to stay calm, to be able to access our wisdom in times of high stress, in times where things are moving at a high speed and there's a lot of pressure and stress, to be able to keep that inner calm and that inner wisdom, and make decisions, good decisions from that place. So important, right? So important.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think what this does is it really helps, in the quote from Einstein. I think for me, it feels like it's very relevant in the context of innovation, right? How do we get to new ideas? How do we get to new breakthrough solutions for the challenges that we're facing? Well, we need to think differently, right? We need to access new types of thinking and imagining, if we're going to really be able to create the solutions for the future. So I think, it's quite easy to see how practical spirituality is in the workplace based on these types of definitions.
Well, it's very, very insightful of you to talk about leadership, and also, a genius of someone, Albert Einstein, to talk about a new thinking is required. You see, the thing about, and certainly the way research into spirituality, most of the research is being used for leadership development, because leadership has to face with the most complex type of challenges and opportunities, right? I want to say that, for me, the beauty of, spirituality and spirit in the workplace, Mark, is that, it's the easiest of all the kind of new thinking. Awakening spirit and spirituality in the workplace is the easiest to implement for development of leaders, but I stress it's for the development of everyone at whatever level they are and in whatever stage of their life they are in, right? Because spirit is universal. It is already, all right, innate in our human nature.
I love about these definitions, Peter, is that it makes it very clear that spirituality is this, all-encompassing force, if you like.
Yes.
And that it's very different than, how we think about religion, right? Because often these two concepts get intertwined, right? We think religion is spirituality, spirituality is religion. And maybe that is also one of the reasons why we are hesitant to really deliberately speak about spirituality in the workforce, because there's much more potential for misunderstanding when, because we have different religions and people have different beliefs, and we assume that religions are separate, that they're kind of like, my religion is different than your religion. And so it's better to keep that out of the work, that's like good for the personal life. And if we're mixing spirituality and religion, I can understand why we would also want to keep spirituality out, because that's kind of all, part of that world. And I I would love to hear a little bit more from you. Like, how do you look at these two things? Are they the same? Are they different? How are they different?
Yeah. Well, very, very good observation, Mark. One of the reasons, of course, today, um, religions, mainstream religion and so many other forms of religion to the world. If you look over history, it doesn't have the best history. It's made huge, huge mistakes, if you like, or it's been dominating, it's been exclusive, there's only one, and there's domination. But at the same time, I want to say here, later on we can talk about it, that you know religion will never go away. In fact, once you understand spirit and spirituality, or in a larger framework, you can reinvent, if you like, or relook whatever religious beliefs you have, and still, hold this bigger uh, idea of spirituality. Maybe the next, I've put together a slide. Maybe the next one will reinforce this point. Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Let's look at the diagram on the right-hand side first, all right, where you have the two circles. And straight away here, without looking at all the other sort of more detailed side of it, I think we can capture everything in the image. Religion and spirituality are connected, all right? Religion takes, if you like, and not in proportion, a smaller space because it is more exclusive, it is for members, it's got established rituals and practices, it's based on one kind of religious scriptures and texts. Whereas spirituality is uh, more sacred. It includes the ordinariness of everyday life, right? And so, in other words, through the context of spirituality, to refer back to your point, rather than through the banner of religion, even though religion has got a large element of spirituality, from an entry point of view, spirituality is probably much more acceptable, all right? And we've seen from the work already done, right? And I think, just very quickly, I think it's the reason why we, in our first podcast, we look at the Big Bang, that means the beginning of time and evolution. And you see the four spirit in the corners, basically to symbolize that spirit is immanent. It is an inherent part of the fabric of our cosmos, right? As many, many spiritual leaders have been able to show us since 2000 or 3000 even years ago. So there are three elements here: the more sort of organized, smaller circle religion, the more inclusive and the more everyday uses of spirituality. And within this kind of context, the background, the matrix behind everything is the immanence, if you like. It's everywhere. We talked about this early on. The spirit is everywhere. So I think there are two definitions. Ken Wilber says, because it's, interwoven into the fabric of the whole universe and evolution. So it's a condition of all conditions, the being of all beings, and the nature of all natures. Now, it sounds very highfalutin, but this has been experienced, as I said, by the traditional sages, indigenous wisdom, right? And where it is the ground of everything, but it takes practice. It takes awakening to higher and higher level, if that is what one person chooses. And of course, I just want to link that a lot of, when we talk about higher levels of spirit, and when we talk about, the Big Bang, we also link spirit with the level of consciousness. You can call it divine consciousness, that's the beginning, or you can say, for example, illustrated here, the spirit-filled life is an expanded consciousness-filled life. This is by Paul Smith, a teacher. So, Mark, here we have. I hope this helps.
Yeah, it's super insightful, Peter. Thank you so much. As I was listening to you, I was kind of thinking, in the context of companies, organizations, there might actually be like another circle within the circles here. Like within religion, maybe there is a sub-circles there, which we could refer to as cultures, like organizational cultures.
Yeah, I look at it more from in the work context, a kind of a culture, a co-creation, and a sort of rethinking of cultural values, right? For example, a very simple example, we make it practical. I'm sure in an organization, in a team, there are many people with different beliefs, even religious practice. Just, have workshops or meetings, all right, over a period of time, and ask each person to kind of state what kind of religious belief they are, create a safe space for it, of course, facilitate it, right? And ask, what are the values if the workplace allows you to sort of build a new culture? What values do you bring from your beliefs? In other words, from a Eastern belief, Hinduism, if you're practicing Buddhist, if you're a Christian, if you are a Zen practitioner, a meditational, if you are, steep into yoga, each of them, but focus on the values, as you say, Mark, a circle within spirituality or religion, and input the common values, and you'll find, I can almost assure you, you'll find very common descriptions in different ways. And if you filter it down, you'll find 3 or 4 values that people from all religious belief within that work group will agree on. There you go. That is what you're talking about, Mark. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, nicely put, Peter.
Yeah.
I think this really brings it home, like to the specifics, right, of how we think about culture. It's in this realm as well. I feel like
Yes.
it's this level of depth that where culture sits, and how we can think about it. So yeah, this has been super enlightening. So thank you for sharing all this wisdom, Peter. Is there anything else that you feel you would like to capture in this second session that we've had?
I think we've covered enough for this session. And just very quickly, in the next podcast, we'll look at the evolutionary nature of how spirit, right, from the highest realms came to be what we are experiencing spirit today in our rational, modern and postmodern world. We begin to see how the chain can be used to help us to understand of the context of spirit and spirituality as an evolutionary occurrence. I think then it will really set us up. We can go to the grill, but we already have a very high, big story. We also are going to have a very high knowledge, and that will really set us free to, really make spirituality in work, a more expansive, a more open, a more safe, because we can always rest in the safety that we've, touched higher level of knowing. We can rest in that safety, in that, comfort, in that peace that we have done our due diligence, if you like. Instead of just, going in, looking at the parts, we start with the whole, and now we look at the parts.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it, Peter.
Yeah. Good one, Mark. It's been fun again, as always.